Hello again, it's Crew Call presented by Flow Racing. So glad you've joined us as we talk to the men and women behind the wrenches going into the garage area. Steve Post from Motor Racing Network, joined by 25-time race-winning, Cup Series race-winning crew chief and championship-winning crew chief, Todd Gordon. Hello, Todd. How are you?
I'm great.
We have had this next-gen car. I don't know how long, I don't know when this thing first arrived on the scene in the blueprint form.
Well, I was part of a test in December of 19,
okay.
on a racetrack with it.
Right.
So go back
that.
beyond that.
Yeah.
You got to have another year plus before that.
And one of the things that I believe that we've all watched with this thing is what's it going to be like on a road course? Because there are a lot of the characteristics of this car that seem, to me, I'm just a pit road guy, they seem road course friendly. This week we go to COTA. We get our first test of this thing, Todd, on a road course.
Yeah, and when you looked at it, the organizational test they had at the Roval,
right?
Lots of comments, lots of compliments on this race car, and the bigger wheel, the 18-inch wheel, allowed AP to put some really big brakes on these things. We're going to test them out down here at COTA. Big place, big braking zones. Got some new asphalt down there. We'll talk to Alan about that, what they think that's going to do. But this is going to be a great race to watch and see where this car goes. And I think this is going to be a great race car for road racing.
You just referenced Alan. Alan Gustafson going to be our guest because who better to talk to when it comes to road course racing? You guys chased him around a lot of road courses over the last few years with that driver, Chase Elliott. Man, they are buttoned up on road course racing over at Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah, they sure are. That became, it was apparent. You watched, and they ran really well at Watkins Glen, and him and Martin ran that way for a while. And then when he nosed into the tire barrier at the Roval, and then it went to the back, he said, he's done, and came back and won the race. And then even last year with the spin and the damage, we'll have to talk to him a little bit about that too, because they did a phenomenal job of repairing that car and drove back to a really good finish out of it. It's they've done a great job with road racing over there at Hendrick Motorsports, and explicitly Alan and Chase have done they've been the leader of that for multiple years. And Kyle ran really well at a lot of the road courses as well last year, Kyle Larson. But it'd be good to get their take on what's different now with the new car and going to these events. What's it going to be like? That's
going to be great. It really, truly is. Alan Gustafson, he joins us, and we're going to break it all down this time here on Crew Call. Crew Call presented by Flow Racing continuing on. Hey, before we continue the conversation, I do want to thank the folks at Flow Racing for participating, for being our partner here on Crew Call. Going to be with us all year long. If you are a fan of any kind of racing at all, Flow Racing has you covered. I mean, it's wall-to-wall racing all weekend long. Todd, I've watched this stuff with sprint cars for the last few years. Now they're in the NASCAR Weekly Series, the NASCAR Modifieds, the Smart Modifieds. I am telling you, this pay-per-view model that Flow Racing is spearheading, we got a lot of racing access to it if we choose to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Even my original short track,
that's right,
Oswego Speedway, part of the Flow Racing program. So. Super modified racing. I'll be keeping an eye on that all year long.
Awesome. Well, so we appreciate Flow Racing, and you can get Flow Racing. Just find them at Flow Racing and check it out and get subscribed, and that way you can partake of racing all weekend long. Crew Call presented by Flow Racing continues on, and joining us from over at Hendrick Motorsports, crew chief for Chase Elliott on the Napa car, as well as Hooters and UniFirst and all the other partners that they have, is Alan Gustafson. Hello, Alan. Welcome back to Crew Call.
Yeah. Hey, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Great to catch up with you. Alan, Todd and I, before the break, were talking about this car and road racing and how this car seems like it has some characteristics that might be positive in road racing. You guys have been the top road racing team in NASCAR. Just your overall assessment on taking this car to COTA this weekend.
Yeah, well, we're excited to do it. I mean, the car on paper should perform really well, right? It's symmetric in the underwing and all the things that typically would produce a good car on the road course, really big brakes. So, the sequential shifter, I think all those things should make independent rear suspension, and the list goes on and on. I think all those things should make the car drive well and have some good speed. I'm looking forward to understanding it, and I'm sure we'll have a steep learning curve at the road courses like we have at the intermediate track. So we'll just start that process and see where we can get to.
Yeah, when you look back at the last, I would say 4 years, and maybe it goes farther than that, but you guys have been the team to beat when it comes to road course racing. You've been dominant, and I think some of that last year kind of rolled over to the 5 car as well. But between the two of you, you have owned road course racing. How much of that dominance and what you had do you think rolls forward into how you prepare this new car that's a common element for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the question we've all got right now. So, I mean, certainly we know we have great race car drivers, and that's going to be something very consistent. But I do feel like we had gotten to a point over, a long time a decade worth of working on road course cars that had got us to a really good place where we could put cars that, had a technical advantage on the track. And certainly with the new car, we're kind of starting that process over, and the field's certainly, parts and pieces wise is much more level. So yeah, we're going to do everything we can to get back to that advantage, and hopefully we can get there really quickly. But I certainly think we're going to have a lot to learn with this car, and it's fun to do that, and I enjoy that process, but certainly gives you a little bit of apprehension on performance.
I would definitely think that the lessons learned through the last 10 years are still, what to focus on going into road racing. And even if it's a common piece, you're gonna make your path down that road. Would look for you guys to be really strong here. But what challenges has this next gen car brought to you that weren't expected now that we've raced it a few races?
Yeah, I think basically most of the problems that we faced, we kind of knew were going to exist. It's just to what magnitude. And I think you've seen, the lack of side force on these cars makes it difficult to have, saves or catches or, not overcorrect. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing visually. You've seen, a lot of guys just really overcorrect and either spin out or have pretty head-on contact with the wall. I mean, so that whole phenomenon makes it to where you've got to drive the car differently and set the car up differently. So we've been working through that. And I think the other thing we certainly knew was coming, I don't think we knew to the magnitude, the difficulties of pit stops is just, indexing, the aluminum wheels with steel drive pins and the potential issues there and the shortcomings with that process and procedures. And yeah, working through that's been a big one at the forefront of our minds too.
Alan, Todd and I last week on the program, we talked about the pit stops as far as the teams go. It's amazing to me that we're down in the 10-second break, maybe even down. As you guys work on that, just how intense has it become on pit road, and will it become on pit road? Is this window even get shorter of pit stops?
Yeah, I've been really. There's a lot of movement on pit road, right? I mean, there's a lot of places gained and lost every pit stop. So I think that just goes to the inconsistency that everybody's having. Nobody's refined the process completely. So if you get it right, you stand to gain a lot. And when things don't go well, in the past it was maybe an index issue or a few lug nuts, and you're talking half a second or 0.3 of a second. Now it seems to be much more in that second and a half or even potentially more range. And yeah, I just, we've had, it's bitten us a time or two, and our pit crew's been amazing, but even those guys haven't been immune to it. So yeah, I think it's got everybody up and down pit road.
And pits, everything's new, right? Cars new for you to deal with, for Chase to deal with, pit crew to deal with single lugs and what's going on. One of the things that I've been fascinated, we talk about road course racing, and Steve and I were talking about this earlier. I thought, you guys really made your statements at 2 Roval races stood out in my mind. When you nosed into the tire barrier and fixed it, came back and won. That was just incredible. But then also last year, you got damage. I thought, you tore up the rear of the car, and you guys came down pit road, and you had diligently worked on your car and got it to where it was very competitive, came right back into racing pretty hard. So with everything that's new, how do you approach like the damage repair with this car? Because I feel like that's something that you guys as a team have been excellent at.
Yeah, it's we've I guess you can look at it two ways. Fortunately or unfortunately, we had some of this at California this year. We kind of went through that
Yeah.
same process
Yeah.
again.
And came back to a top five. I mean, chasing a top five finish there. So
Right. So yeah, those moments you talk about. I mean, that doesn't show up in the box score and is not in a win or a top five in history. But like you mentioned, the Roval, that repair, that's the race that I'm as proud of as any in my career. It's a huge accomplishment and just the team effort it takes. And one thing that I'm super proud of my team about, and truly the pit crew, and Todd, you've been through this experience. When you have pit crew members that are, athletes, sometimes they're a little bit disconnected from the car and they're not as enthusiastic to fix the car as they are to go try to do a, pit stop to gain you spots on pit road. And I've got a bunch of guys on the pit crew that are just as enthusiastic. They're digging just as hard to fix the car to run, 30th as they are to put the car in the lead. And that is a big deal to me. I mean, when you get to those crash repair situations, it's an effort game, right? It's all about effort and desire. So yeah, that's a big plus for our team. But to your original question on the next gen, this car really seems to be pretty robust, and we've been able to, the bodies are tough and can take some hits, and you are in a good position to continue. I think more so than we were in the past. The weak link that we've seen is that rear toe link. That thing bends really pretty easy, and when you make contact with the wall, that's what we had to fix at California. So I think that's an area. Even I'm just like Tyler Reddick at Daytona. I don't know this for sure, but the intel that I got, that toe link bent for him when the 27 hit him in the left rear, and then ultimately, he crashed. So I think that's something that you can get even from wall contact or just contact on the track. And certainly at a road course, you could see that happen. Turn one at COTA, right, where we funnel on in there. Some things like that can happen. So I think the next gen car in general is pretty robust, but the rear toe link seems to be the weak link of everything that we've been through so far.
Alan, bringing this back to COTA, last year we were down there and raced. Of course, it was a monsoon when we raced down there. I know the car is different, but what types of things could you bring out of last year and apply to this year, hopefully in dry conditions?
Yeah, I mean, I think just familiarity with the track, and we were fortunate enough to do the test there, which helped because we did get a lot of dry running, and then the tire test, and then the rain came, so we've got a good bit of time on the track, and it's a big track with a lot of different corners and a lot of speed variation, and it isn't like a Watkins Glen that's pretty dominant right hand. COTA's got a good mix of both, and it's got a good mix of high speed corners and slow speed corners and big braking zones, and so there's a lot there to take in, and the nuances of the track. So I mean, we're still going to learn a ton, but I feel like experience-wise, we should be positioned fairly well between the two, times we've been out there for the test and for the race, and looking forward to, getting the next gen car out there and working through that.
And heard that there's been some paving done for the F1 cars. How much the racetrack is different than what you had last year?
Yeah, I looked at some of the Jerry Caproth from NASCAR sent us some of those pictures, and it's certainly different, and that when the track gets paved, it typically grip comes along with it, and then some of the those bumps, as much as people can complain about them, they give you opportunity, right? They give you opportunity for the driver to do his job, and they give you opportunity for the team to gain an advantage there too. So it's a little bit bittersweet. I mean, you like the fact that, hey, it's probably a little bit easier now that the track's been paved, but I do think some opportunity for advantages go away when that happens typically.
Yeah, that's really cool. You talked a little bit about how quick pit stops are. How do you adjust on this car anymore?
Air pressure. Yeah, there's not much. Yeah, it's tough. There's not much. Fortunately for us, our team's done a great job, and certainly we have great support with Chevrolet and HMS. But We've had our cars have been pretty close. We haven't had to do much, but yeah, it's tough because there's just not much opportunity. You know, we have the rear weight jackers, limited rounds there, basically, you know, 4 rounds either way, or whatever way you choose them. You've got 8 rounds at your disposal either side, which, you know, to the average person may seem like a lot, but if you go to a track like we have without any practice with a new car, it's tough. So air pressure has been pretty sensitive, and you know, if you want to take the time, the car does have those adjustable swivel arms, you know, front and if you're running a rear bar. So there's some there, but you know, that's if you're in that position, it's pretty desperation mode.
That's exactly the word I was going to use, was desperation mode. Yeah, pretty cool to hear that.
For sure, for sure. Alan, over the last 5 years, we've gone from hours of practice to no practice, and now we're settled in 50 minutes some places, 15 or 20 minutes other places, right into qualifying. Especially looking at like the 3 West Coast swing races, what we had there. What's your take on that? How has that been for you guys, getting this new format that we have that's somewhere in the middle of what we've experienced over the last few years?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think it depends on your perspective. Like if I was a guy who was sitting on the couch, you know, sitting down to watch practice or qualifying or the race, then I think the limited practice is great to where the cars don't drive very well and you don't refine
Yep.
things. I mean, California comes to mind, right? California qualifying session was probably the most exciting qualifying session any of us has seen in how long, right? I mean, maybe ever.
Yeah.
And it was because of the cars drove bad in certain situations and the bumps and the aprons and all that stuff. So, I mean, it was super exciting. And, you know, we were in the thick of it. And, you know, you sit there and if you're a fan, you're like, man, that's awesome. But as a crew chief who tries to control all that and make sure that those things don't happen and you don't spin out, you know, trying to get the pole and you don't crash your car, it's bad. So you want as much practice as you can. You want it to be as boring as it can be. And that is best when you wear that hat. But I certainly, you know, I've done this long enough and understand the perspective of entertainment. And yeah, from that side, I think the less practice and keeping things difficult for the drivers and for the teams is probably the most entertaining.
Wow, if you wanted to be a politician, you did a nice job answering that one. You did a great job answering. It's like,
I mean, yeah, I mean, like Todd knows, right? At some point in time, this comes to an end. I need to do something, right? So,
Yep.
That's funny.
Yep. But it's cool that you get the bigger picture. It's not just about what you want to do; it's about what's good for the sport. And that's I think those are the things that you're hearing out of Alan here, is that you know, understanding the global picture, the
big picture. Yeah, no.
Definitely. You know, another one of those things from the outside, perception from the outside here. Your team, explicitly the 9 team, you and Chase and all of your guys, you've been really good for quite a while. But we saw a move last year where Chad came off the box and became more of a management role. And my perception from being a competitor outside of your organization, not seeing it, I felt like your programs all became more equal. I think everybody else kind of rose to you, and your overall your program, you know, the whole Hendrick Motorsports program became better in that move. Is that did something happen? Is that just a perception, or has the dynamic changed with Chad in that position?
Yeah, I think certainly Chad in that position has brought a lot, and you know, he's got tons of experience and he knows, you know, what's important, where to focus, and he certainly can help guide the 4 teams or influence the 4 teams and help the crew chiefs get in the position they need to be. And certainly I do want to mention, certainly Chad deserves a lot of credit. I think Rudy deserves a lot of credit for what he's brought. Rudy's a really talented guy. He's a great crew chief, and I think he's brought a lot to our company and certainly to the 24 team. And then, you know, Kyle, you know, Kyle needs no introduction, and what he brings to racing in general and what he can do behind the wheel. And, you know, certainly the addition of Kyle is massive. He's yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think he needs an introduction. The guy's track record's amazing. So yeah, between those 3 key pieces, I think, your assessment, Todd, is right. Everybody's really stepped up their game, and we have 4 cars that every week are competitive to win, and certainly in the hunt to win races and championships. And that's a special thing. It's really hard to do. It's really hard it's a little, I don't say a little easier. I mean, it just doesn't sound right, but when you have to have 4 guys competing all the time together, that's a little bit tougher dynamic than one person or one team that consistently is better. And there's kind of a hierarchy in our company. Doesn't exist. It's all 4 at the top. So it's been a lot of fun, managing that. And for me, my peers, Greg, certainly I've been with a long time, worked with a long time, and Cliff, and the addition of Rudy, it's a great group of guys. And it makes it really easy.
Todd mentions Chad, but when I look at the leadership over there, of course, Marshall Carlson involved, but when I look particularly at Rick Hendrick, Jeff Gordon, and Jeff Andrews, the very first thing that comes to mind is that they're all just winners in everything they seem to touch, everything they do. How important is that, or how much does that trickle down to you guys and then to the men and women working on these cars, having leadership that is all about excellence?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I mean, it starts with Mr. H. I think all of us, everybody that you mentioned have been here at Hendrick Motorsports for a long time. And certainly we all learn from Mr. Hendrick and his way of, conducting himself and doing business, and, his philosophy of servant leadership, and, putting his employees really before himself. And that's really the difference. And that's the key. And I think everyone that you mentioned in that group, they follow that same philosophy and use that philosophy. And, that promotes the excellence in the performance. But it's more about, being unselfish, and when with being a leader, with that power comes great responsibility. And I think you can use that responsibility for, personal benefit, or you can use that for benefit of your employees and your organization. Those people you mentioned all, put themselves behind the what's best for the company. And that's why I think it's been good for a long time, and certainly is going to sustain as long as that philosophy is held.
Alan, last year on Crew Call, you joined me and we talked about your background in Ormond Beach, Florida. We talked about Smokey Unick and his grandson, Casey, your friend. We talked about Jimmy Foster and that background. And if folks, want to get more on Alan's background, you can certainly Google back and find that show. But I read something here that just struck me as interesting. You were with Jimmy Foster and you rented a shop from Gary Dehart.
Yeah.
And the kind of the way it was worded, was that kind of what got your foot in the door at Hendrick Motorsports? You caught Gary's eye. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So I rented Jimmy and I worked together when we were in Florida. We worked together when we moved to North Carolina, and then he went and raced at the time Busch Grand National cars, and I went on and actually worked with Andy Houston on his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series truck. Mm-hmm. So long story short, Jimmy's Busch Grand National experience wasn't great. And we decided, I was young at the time, like really young, like 22 or something like that. We decided that we were going to give it a go ourselves, and I was going to become a owner of a Busch Grand National team. It was a great idea. Huh? So I rented some space from Gary Dehart, and we built a car. We had one car, and we ran one race at Myrtle Beach, which we made the race, which at that time, I don't remember exactly what year, but, 90s, late 90s, that to make those races were hard. So we made it, which was a great accomplishment. I'll never forget. I think I got $10,000 in sponsorship for the race, and my tire bill was like 16 or 12 or something. So it was not a great business proposition. Long story short, that didn't pan out. But through renting the shop from Gary, when I was broke, he gave me an opportunity to work for him, and then working for him, we generated a relationship. And when he got the opportunity to come back to be crew chief for the 5 at Hendrick Motorsports, he made that a condition of his return, that the 3 employees that he had all would have jobs at Hendrick Motorsports. So if he wasn't, as good of a guy as he is, and is done so much for me. I certainly am not sitting here right now. So, yeah, Gary was a big influence for me and helped me get my foot in the door. There's no doubt that I'm not, where I'm at in my career if it wasn't for his help. So he's a special guy. He's a great friend, and yeah, I've learned a ton from him. Probably the best fabricator I've, all around fabricator I've ever been around in my life. The guy's amazing. He can build anything. And so it's that was a big part of my early part of my career.
Yeah, definitely. And the fabrication piece kind of speaks to where your repair of race cars and things like that on pit road.
Right, yeah.
It's all part of that philosophy. Again, I love to hear the story. You hear it out of a lot of people, but taking opportunities and making the most of them.
Yeah,
It's
neat stuff.
it's what we've all done to climb the ladder, right? And really cool story.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, to your point, Todd, is like, there's always a lot of good people behind anybody who's successful, right? And Gary's certainly one of those people for me.
God, thank God that Bush team failed for you, Alan. My gosh.
No doubt.
Wow. Cool stuff. Alan, always a pleasure to chat with you. We appreciate your time today and wish you the best at COTA this weekend and on throughout the season. I'm sure we'll talk to you along the way, but thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun. Good to see you guys.
There we go. Alan Gustafson joining us here on Crew Call. Stay with us, more in just a moment. Crew Call presented by Flow Racing continuing on. Hey, before we continue the conversation, I do want to thank the folks at Flow Racing for participating, for being our partner here on Crew Call. Going to be with us all year long. If you are a fan of any kind of racing at all, Flow Racing has you covered. I mean, it's wall-to-wall racing all weekend long. Todd, I've watched this stuff with sprint cars for the last few years. Now they're in the NASCAR Weekly Series, the NASCAR Modifieds, the Smart Modifieds. I am telling you, this pay-per-view model that Flow Racing is spearheading, we got a lot of racing access to it if we choose to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Even my original short track.
That's right.
Oswego Speedway, part of the Flow Racing program. So super modified racing. I'll be keeping an eye on that all year long.
Awesome. Well, so we appreciate Flow Racing, and you can get Flow Racing. Just find them at Flow Racing and check it out and get subscribed, and that way you can partake of racing all weekend long. Crew Call presented by Flow Racing continues on, and so Todd, we started the show, and we talked about this car on road courses. After listening to Alan, what's your thoughts?
I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this ends up and what happens, with what they get for practice and how things go. To your point, we didn't get to race on this racetrack. We raced on a water that was on top of this racetrack last year. So a whole different environment, hopefully, this weekend for these guys. And it'd be cool to see. The Hendrick dominance on road course racing is, we talked about that.
Right.
And that was the bar that we all used for road course racing as crew chiefs. So it'd be interesting to see how the next gen car, whether that levels the field. I still think they're going to have an advantage because they've at least got the mindset of what it takes to road course successfully. So we'll see where that all goes.
That guy that sits behind the wheel of that 9 car is pretty good on road courses too.
Yeah, the one behind the 5 isn't too bad either.
Yeah, you're right.
And it almost seems like there's a little bit of a very healthy competition.
Yeah.
And that's always good to have.
Pushing.
We talked a little bit there about the equality that the teams have become with Rudy coming on board, and the 48 runs well too. But when you get those guys where they're competing against each other, it ratchets the whole program up higher.
Builds everyone up.
Yeah, because you've got to continue to push to be the best in the organization.
Yeah. I'm just excited. Hopefully the weather cooperates. This is a world-class road course. It's a Formula One road course. And I hated some of the discussion last year with, are we going back or are we not going back? Because I don't think we got a fair, we didn't even get close to a fair shake. I hope we get a fair shake at this road course this week and see what these cars can do on it. Because shoot, if it means I get a chance to go to Austin, I would go to Austin again in a heartbeat because I love traveling down there too.
Yeah, I think you got to let it play out again. And really last year, if you looked at with all the weather, inclement weather we still had a pretty exciting truck race. We still had a pretty exciting, weekend building up to it. It's just the rain, the amount of rain that we got for the Cup race was a challenge. So hopefully we get a sunny day, and even if we get a little bit of water, that still makes it kind of exciting. But
Yeah.
if we can avoid the monsoons, let's see how this works out.
Let's see how it works out for sure. Our friends at PRN have the coverage of the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series race. We will be down there 12:30 Eastern Time on Saturday at Circuit of the Americas. The Expel 225 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race. So make sure you tune in MRN, and then make sure you tune in to our friends at PRN over the course of the weekend. Going to be great stuff. Always good to catch up with Alan Gustafson. We appreciate him. For Todd Gordon, I'm Steve Post. Thanks for joining us this time on Crew Call, presented by Flow Racing.